This is a compliance moment talking about rules and regulations facing assisted living facilities here in Texas. I wanted to take a moment and just talk about the rule process and where do rules come. When we say rules, when a surveyor is standing in front of you, we're actually all looking to the Texas Administrative Code. So the Texas Administrative Code is a huge, thick book of rules that I love this word. They're promulgated. I feel smart. Probably don't sound smart, but I feel smart whenever I use that word. In fact, sometimes a little confession here. Sometimes I will use words I don't quite understand to make myself sound a little more photosynthesis. And so hopefully you now hold me in high esteem because of that just the way I drop that word bomb. Rules are promulgated. So I'm kidding. My wife hates it when I go down that line. But anyway, I think I've wasted the first 60 seconds of today's rule minute. But I want to talk a little bit how rules get formed and processed or promulgated. And so every rule slash bit of the Texas Administrative Code must come directly from law. So the state legislature meets every other year for 6 months. They pass some laws. When those laws pass, they are assigned to a specific agency. So if there's a law that's passed related to hunting, that'll go off to the Fish and Wildlife folks. And if a law passes that goes to cars, on licensing of vehicles, that'll go off to the licensing department. So when those laws pass, they get assigned to the agency. The agency will then go about the rule process where they'll go back and they'll review obviously what the law says, but of course it's not always exactly clear what we're trying to get at. And so they'll go back and they'll review notes that the legislator have made. They'll go back and review testimony of what people said through that process. They'll then make a stab at, hey, here's what we think this means. So here's how we would take this law and actually write the rules that we as licensees would then be required to follow. They'll then go through a public comment process. Sometimes if it's a more complicated law, they'll have bring together stakeholders. So they'll bring in actual users. In this case, they'll invite assisted living providers to come in and have a conversation, and they'll bring in resident advocates. Oftentimes they'll invite the ombudsman's office. We here at Torch will often get an invite to sit down and have a conversation about how those rules should get played out. Once that rule gets finalized, so that the agency says, hey, here's what we think that what the law is trying to get at, or what it's trying to require or not require, that then gets published in the Texas Register. And so that's basically the State Herald saying, hey, everybody, we're about to make a rule. And then we as the public have an opportunity to comment on that. Once those comments come in, the agency rule writers will sit down with those comments and they'll compare that all the way back to the beginning of the process to make sure that it was or wasn't something that should be taken into account. Usually because the rules have been fairly well vetted at that point. Usually when it makes the Texas Register, it's well on its way to being a final rule. So what that means is when a law passes, it becomes law at the end of the legislative session. Oh, let me rephrase that. It becomes officially passed when the legislative session ends, because theoretically, a bill passes. Theoretically, it never happens, but they could go back and say, oh, no, we didn't mean that. And so once the legislative session ends, the governor has 90 days to sign it, veto it, or do nothing. In the case of signing it or doing nothing, it becomes law September 1. And so that rule writing process, they don't do anything with it until September 1. Then they start that process of the research and promulgating the rule. And then once it's all said and done, and they're like, okay, here's the final rule, they'll send out that provider letter. And so one of two things, you need to be subscribing to the provider letters that they send out, or more likely, you probably just need to be a member of Torch, and we'll send you the ones that you need to pay attention to. But you should know it yourself. And so I as much as I'd love to have you as a member of Torch, you should be paying attention to those provider letters as well. And so that's the way the state says, hey, everybody, here's a rule change. They'll often publish that in a way that highlights, hey, here's what's new, and then that gets incorporated into it. This has been a compliance moment with Torch. My name is John Darby.